Ladies and gentlemen, will you please welcome to the show the one, the only, Garrett Shider. What's up, big dog? How are you, man?
I'm good to go, man. How about
Oh
yourself?
man, doing good, doing good. It's good to have you on board, man. Let's talk. Let's talk because
Let's
there's a
talk.
lot of stuff to talk about, man. As I said, I am so glad to actually get you on the show now. We had actually I'll get into the story later. Let's start at the beginning, shall we?
Okay.
And let's start talking about your pops first. Okay.
Okay.
Because I really want to kind of handle this in chronological order for you. And
Let's
just for
do
the
it.
listeners as well, because I want to make sure that everybody kind of understands your history, understands your background, and just all the groundwork that was done in front of you, and the pieces that you had to pick up, and the things that you had to, the challenges that you had.
Yeah, sounds like we got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, man. I told you, I've been thinking a lot about this, and I was trying to get you on the show, but I was not asking you directly. I was doing it. I was doing it through somebody, and that somebody, I guess, I don't know what happened.
Hey, it's all good. The
But
universe works as it works, and
that's
it
correct.
happens when it's
It
supposed to happen.
it absolutely does. It absolutely does. So, got a lot of comments here on you already.
Hey, y'all. How y'all doing?
Lisa says, "What a sexy voice you have."
Oh,
Look at this.
y'all
Here we
don't have me
go.
up here
This
blushing.
looks. Look at this, Susie.
Look,
There.
what
Look at
you
all these
say?
people. Look at all these people.
Don't do it. Don't do
Oh,
it.
look
I'm
at
not
this.
supposed
Look
to
at
be on
this.
here
Oh my gosh.
blushing.
Come on now. Look at this. Look, Cammy with a smooth. Oh, look at
Oh
this.
man. But y'all better make sure that y'all start following me, because other than that, the fan base
Oh my
the fan
God.
base has been leaning heavy towards the man side. So it's nice to see a
Yeah.
bunch of women out there that's about to jump on the boat,
Oh
man.
yeah. No, yeah, there's
Come on,
there's
y'all
tons of
balance that out for me, man.
all right. So, all right, let's do this.
Where my funky women?
Yeah, they're all here. They're all
All
here. Every
right.
single bit of them right here. So for those who don't know, Garrett Shider is the son of Gary Shider, who is one of the original members of Parliament, Funkadelic. Most everybody knew him as Diaper Man, not in the beginning, but once he started doing the diaper thing, he became Diaper Man. And he was okay with that because he was a marketing genius. He was just like, whatever it's going to take for you to remember me, that's what we're going to do. Myself and of course my good friend, that's my my co-host on the show, Rob Rhythm, were blessed enough to be able to see him at one of his final shows in Atlanta at the Masquerade on April 9th, 2010. And he would pass away literally just a couple of months later.
Yeah.
So and I remember that show distinctively because one of the things I know most about Parliament is man, I think there's only been like a handful of shows that I've ever made it all the way through. Because it's
some long shows.
It's some long shows.
Yeah.
It's like 3-4 hour shows. It's like, you sit there for 3.5 hours. You go, okay, I got you, because you get in that mode where you go to the concerts and you get these artists that give you an hour and a half or an hour and 45. Maybe you might get 2 and you go, wow, I got my money's worth. But when you start getting 3.5 hours into it, and you're just
you
like,
have to be conditioned for that show.
Oh my God.
You got to be conditioned for our show, man.
A legend.
Yeah.
Served as a musical director for Parliament since 1971.
Yes.
And of course, when he began wearing the diaper on stage, he became Diaper Man. Inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame with Parliament in 1997. 1997. Inducted by Prince, no less. This is a huge Prince fan base right here in this.
I saw that, man. I've been checking out the page. I say, wow, man. I like that too, man, because like I said, Prince had all the women fans. So
yeah, oh yeah.
Y'all come on over, man. Check me out.
And anyway, where Prince stood on the stage and gave a short induction speech, but a great induction speech, and talked about after seeing Parliament at the Beverly Theater that he went into the studio that night and recorded Erotic City.
Right.
So for those who want to know why Erotic City is as funky as it is It was a direct result of the influence of Parliament. He went to go
Inspired
see
by
Parliament.
P-Funk.
Yeah, inspired by P-Funk. So, Gary Shider,
Yes,
the
sir.
man who worked tirelessly to bring us the funk, prominently featured on songs like "Getting to Know You," "One Nation Under a Groove," "Cosmic Slop." I mean, he's like on all
Production
like
galore.
production everywhere. And
Writing galore.
exactly. And I've been rambling on and on about your father because having seen him play multiple times, unfortunately, I never got a chance to meet him. Surprisingly, I've met George, who would seem like would be the more difficult person to meet. I've met George 3 separate times. I've got some stories there for sure.
I'm sure.
Because it wasn't just because none of them were just handshakes, because all of them were a result of me being backstage because I was asked to be there to cover the event. So I would cover it. I would cover the show, and then I would hang out after the show, and then I'd be backstage with Parliament and George and just hanging back there. And it was just plenty of stories. Plenty of stories. Stories
Yeah.
I've told here multiple times, but I do want to take this moment to thank your father for all the decades of funk that he bestowed upon us, and to let you know how much of an honor it is to have his super funky, talented son on the show, who was cut from the same funky piece of fabric. And I just want to just say thank you so much for being here, and it's an honor to have you here for real.
Oh man, thank you for having me. And you know what? I want to thank him too for all of those same reasons, because he's the reason why I'm even here. So
yeah, it's
him and my mama.
Yeah, of course, obviously.
Yes, indeed.
So how old were you when you began to realize that your dad was famous, or was it as far back as you can remember?
All right, so I think that's me. My very first memories of stage, my very first memories of life are like backstage at these shows, and they raised me out there, man. Like the joke is like I learned how to walk on the mothership was like the joke. So essentially I knew immediately because everyone had this swagger already, man. Like I was born in like the height of P-Funk fame, man, like right in the peak of it. So everyone around me just kind of had this air. And I would stand there and watch my father in front of thousands of people, man, and I would watch him just go, everybody say yeah, and everybody would go ah, and I just knew right then, like, man, that is awesome, and I would love to be able to do that myself. You know what I mean? So I knew from the beginning that it was big. Now, you asked me, when did I know that they were famous?
Right.
That was a whole different thing for me, because being raised in the middle of that, first and foremost, they were they are the humblest cats that you probably ever want to meet. My dad probably the most humble of them all. So he wasn't a rah-rah, look at what I did, this is me, listen to my, he wasn't that dude. So when we were out there, it was that, it was a grand old time. It was, it was as big as what it was. But when we went home was regular. you know um we Parliament didn't make the money that they probably should have been making from the music that they were making, and the noise that they were making at the time. So we weren't necessarily living lavish. And I also knew early on that most people that I equated to being famous lived a lavish lifestyle. So that was the kind of conflict for me. Was I knew this thing was big, but I wasn't like seeing them on TV or anything like that regularly, and that's what I equated to fame as a kid. You see what I'm saying? So I knew that this was what it was, but the things that I seen on TV is what I equated to fame. So for a long time, it was kind of weird for me.
Right.
I went to school shortly thereafter. So I wasn't on the road as regularly as I was before that. So I went to public school. I'm going to school with regular kids. You know what I mean? It was just a regular thing. And I would always remember the reactions of their parents when they would find out what dad did. They would always go nuts. Oh my God, that's your dad. Oh my God. And I would just sit there. I would essentially be embarrassed. I'd be like, why? I just did not get it. I couldn't equate it. It wasn't until I was a teenager when the Westbound Funkadelic music was re-released on CD. They sent the entire catalog to our house. I was about 15 now. And now, mind you, from the time I was born up to the time I was 15, dad didn't have all the music. He didn't have the discography. He didn't own it. He didn't play it regularly. And what I knew of the music at that time was what I heard on stage. And at in my time, the set was pretty much, they were set pretty much what they were doing. So as far as I knew, the entire catalog was what I heard them play on stage, and it existed amongst all of maybe 4 total Parliament and Funkadelic records that we probably had around the house until I was 15. This is when I discovered the discography and started to get to read I read the little booklet inside the music for my mother's CD. So I got to read a lot of the backstory and stuff that dad didn't talk about. And I got to learn what was going on and listen while I was learning.
Right.
And all of a sudden, I became a fan of it, just like you did, just like anybody else that's out here listening. I became a fan of it that way. Even though I was raised behind the scenes, I became a fan of it. I started listening. I started exploring for more. I started going to the record store to buy whatever CDs in the discography or tape deck, whatever it was, cassette that I didn't own already, just to make sure that I heard everything in the discography at that point. And then all of a sudden I started realizing, every bit of music that I hear on the radio right now, I put in one of these tapes or one of these CDs and I hear our music on the radio all day long still. You know what I'm saying? Like
Right.
that's when I started to put together, that's when I started to really understand the game. And that's when I started to understand how actually famous he was and how, big the band actually was from a cultural standpoint. I studied like that, like I wasn't a part of it. I absorbed the music and read up and all the articles that I could pick up, and I became a fan like that. And then it just became a plus that my father, who, and then that's when I really started realizing how much work he actually put into it as well. And when I started to gain another kind of respect for him and even became in awe of him. And it was just weird because it was wow, this dude is in my home. It's like he raised me. He's a fucking badass. And it was I was almost too intimidated to even really be like, dude, you're a badass, a lot of people always ask me or always say, I know he showed you a lot. No, he didn't, because I didn't give him time to, because I was too in awe. You know what I mean? I started to play the guitar when I was 16 is when I got interested in it. And I got interested in it listening to Funkadelic music and saying, you know what? I think I was listening to Standing on the Verge album, and the guitar lines were just they were just grabbing me to the point where it was man, I'm gonna grab one of these guitars and I have to do this. I have to learn how to do this. And when he would see me do it, he would get excited and say, let me show you. But then I would get kind of no, 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 no. I would get like that with it. So
Right.
so when he picked up on that, what he did was, he just kind of backed off and he let me kind of just learn how I wanted to. And when he would see me and it would be something that he just couldn't help himself, it's oh, he'll bust in on me and say, hold it real quick, just let me just hold, just because he'll see me ready to put it down. He's like, no, just hold, just real quick, and he might like take a finger. And if you do that right there and put that and then there you go and just try that, and then he just leave. You know what I mean? It just leave.
So he didn't want to. So he didn't want to mess with you too much. He was kind of letting you do your thing, but
yeah, because he
you were just
got
trying
it.
to push him away, though.
Yeah.
I mean,
Well,
you knew he was great.
I did, but I was intimidated. I just felt I don't know. It was two things. I was intimidated, and at that time again, I started to understand the story. He was bad. I realized wow, you were bad from the time you were like 3 years old. You know what I mean?
Yes.
And I wanted to find that. You know what I'm saying? It's like, hold up. Because at that time, I hadn't been playing, but I was in performing arts high school. I had been learning theory, and I had started to kind of explore myself as a musician. And at that time, more so than really wanted to carry that torch, I just wanted to be able to incorporate a little bit of that into what I was doing to establish the fact. I just wanted to establish the lineage in what I was doing, because I was doing rap music at the time. I was young.
Yeah, what's your name? Like Harry something?
Harry Green. Yeah, Harry Green. That's why. Yeah, yeah, I was doing the Harry Green thing. We were doing
Oh
the
my
Merc
God.
camp. We were doing the Merc camp, and I was into it. And I just wanted to incorporate a little bit of that lineage into it. It really wasn't until he passed away that as unfortunate as it was that kind of slapped me upside the head and said, bruh, what have you been doing all this time, man? You know what I'm saying? It's like he laid he laid the yellow brick road he paved the road for you, bro. You know what I'm saying? All you got to do is just walk it, man. You know what I'm saying? And then at that point he was gone, and it was like, now I can't even pick his brain and get what I probably need. So at that point it just became, you know what? Now I just got to figure this out on my own for real. You know what I mean? And that was not easy.
Man, so and it's just we're talking. As a matter of fact, I just had this message up here. I just pulled it down, but Lawrence Worrell.
Yeah, that's my bro right there. What's up, Law?
Say it was my mentor and former roommate. Gotta mess him. Yeah, man. He was just something else. It's just when you lose greats like your father and Bernie and those guys. Just, it really creates, especially for funk artists, it really creates this huge. It's a chasm that can't really be filled. But tell us about the early days when he asked you, pretty much as a young impressionable kid, to come on the road. I mean, what you were already kind of like, wow, I can't believe you're this big. And I heard he did that quite a bit. He asked the family to come on the road quite a bit. So what was that like, even on the first time?
So it was never a thing for him to like pull me out of school, and I would be gone from school for like a month riding around on tour with him, and I would get back to school and they would be like, we took you off the road, we thought you moved away or something. I would like have to re-enroll to school and stuff like that. So he wouldn't do that too often, because you get in trouble doing too much of that. But so for me, when I first actually officially stepped out on the road, I was kind of at a little crossroads in my life. I was like 19. I told you I was in performing arts high school, and I was in there for 3 years, but I was going to school out of district. So going into my senior year, or ending my junior year and going into my senior year, they cracked down on it, and I had to leave and go to my neighborhood school. They wanted to charge me back tuition for it, which we couldn't afford. So in turn, they would not transfer my records to my neighborhood school. And I began to fall behind. And, it was like, come back and do another semester. And you're just like, oh, now you need summer school. And we've picking credits out of the, barrel that we found this here that you got to do. And it became, enough. So I dropped out. And at that time, it was kind of like, you know what? Only thing I really had on my mind was doing music. And I was kind of thrown a ride because I was getting into the musical scene, and thinking about like education, musical education and stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, after I wasn't in the school and in the environment anymore, I was just kind of flailing. So it was kind of a mutual thing. I wanted to go on the road, and Dad was like, you know what, you need to come out here on the road because you're not doing nothing else. And I got George's blessing, so they brought me out. And that's essentially how I ended up out there the first time. It was kind of a mutual thing. I wanted to go, and Dad wanted me out there to keep me out of trouble.
Well, and that's good. It can keep you out of trouble because, we want to talk about um, family for a little bit too, because I mean, not to be too personal, but your mother Linda was his wife from 1978 until the time of his passing in 2010, which is
Yes, indeed.
unheard of in the music industry. One wife through it all the craziness, the fame, the touring. George. So,
I was just about to say that's one thing you could equate to him is the word longevity.
yeah, I
Him
mean,
and Mom, boy, they hung in there.
yeah, I mean, I imagine there was lots of bumpy roads and lots of craziness that was going on too. And I mean, just being front line for everything that your father went through, all of you were like front row. And I know you spent some time on the road with him, and we kind of discussed a little bit, but on those times, during those times when you weren't on the road with him, what was it like? I mean, do you really feel like there's a huge piece of something missing here at the house when he's not here? I mean, what
Um, well, when we were younger, when we were kids, it was more that, you know, um, when we started to kind of grow, or at least, well, me and my younger brother Marshall, shout out to him. He's about 6 years younger than me, so I think he probably more suffered through that more than I did, because by the time I was a teenager, I was into doing things. I was in the performing arts high school, and by the time that was over, I was on the road with him. So it kind of became, you kind of just got used to it because it was like that all our lives. you know like I used to be crushed when I was a little baby, because because you love your dad around, man, and he was that dad. He played with you, and he was a riot. He was wonderful with kids. You know what I'm saying? So he was every bit of that at home, and you missed that part. And he was very much, a rock, a foundation to this, man. But him and my mother, man, shout out to both of them, man. They endured a lot, and they endured a lot holding us down, man. And my mother's
man,
still kicking it strong right now, man. She's a
that's awesome,
soldier.
man. That's definitely awesome, man. I know she's been through it. I mean, with everything that you know went on with that touring lifestyle of being the wife of somebody who has to be on the road all the time. That's got to be a lot as it is. I mean, and then
Yeah.
it's crazy, but you know,
And her thing was, my mother was, as far as I can remember, I think she's like the only female that's probably got writers credits on a Parliament record, on Parliament Funkadelic records. You know what I mean? And my mother was around before her and my dad were hooked up. She was, trying to be a part of it, and for whatever reason, she always felt like she wasn't that really accepted, like she wanted to be. You know what I mean? So just that part, and kind of feeling like she was, for as bad as she was, kind of living in dad's shadow. Of course that brings things with it. My mom's went through a lot, man. So bless her heart. I said she's a soldier. What I mean? And she's still soldiering on. What I mean? She's still soldiering on as she is. Because one thing she is, I tell her all the time, she's super stubborn. So she ain't gonna let nothing hold her back or hold her down.
now when you do finally go on the road with him and Parliament, obviously, I know you saw some things because as I mentioned to you earlier, is that I've been honored enough to be backstage a few times with them, and every single time there's always something crazy going on, and it's not most of it's fan related, and then some of it's just the normal rigmaroles of the road. Um, and I can only imagine that being on the road, especially uh, just kind of watching everything. I mean, do you ever what was what was the first moment, or what was the first instance or occurrence that you can think of that when you were on the road where you were like, oh, this is maybe this is maybe it might be too much for me, or maybe it's opposite. Maybe it's like, oh yeah, this is definitely this is definitely going to be great. Like, was it groupie stuff, or was it what type of things that you see on the road that really just kind of caught you off guard, regardless of which way it was?
Nothing caught me off guard because I told you I was raised on the mother. I learned how to walk on the. I was born on the mothership, bro. And this party, this mothership's been flying like the Enterprise for a lot of seasons, man. So, being raised on that ship at that early age, I've been seeing all of those things all my life. So by the time I was like out there, nothing was new, nothing was surprising. That's that's the one blessing that I take in all of this is in being raised in the way I was raised is the fact that I feel at home on the road. You know what I mean? I know my way around. You know what I mean? I know how to get through an airport like I breeze through an airport like it, a lot of people are like, oh God, the TSA and the airport and the blah, blah. Man, I could get through the airport like I'm getting myself through through the bus station. It's nothing for me. You know what I mean? Like, I love the life I live, man. Nothing surprises me. Nothing shocks me. The mothership has been a constant party. It's had it's trust me, it's come with its adversity because nothing that great comes without a bunch of adversity. So yeah, we've gone through it, but we've been doing this band has been doing this for as long as I've been alive. My dad did this for 40 years of his life, 40 straight years of his life. He's the one band member besides George Clinton who can say, I was in this band for 40 years, bro, from 71 until I checked out of here. You know what I mean? So nothing surprises me, man. I've seen it all, bro. I have seen it all, and I'm shocked by nothing.
Yeah, and there's a lot of band members that come and go, especially in that project, because I've probably seen Parliament, Funkadelic, and P-Funk All Stars in different variants and whatnot. Probably about it, just short of a dozen times, and I know there's people that have seen you've seen them hundreds of times. And matter of fact, I actually wore the shirt in honor.
I see that.
I wore the shirt in honor. I had the George Clinton shirt on last week, but I had to wear Parliament and Your Honor today. But again, minus a handful of shows, the cast was always changing. And when you were asked to come on board by George Clinton after your father had passed, did you feel at home, or did you feel maybe a little bit apprehensive because of the shoes you'd have to fill? And what was going through your mind when you're asked to kind of cross over and kind of not necessarily take your dad's place? That wasn't really what the vibe was. It was just kind of like, it was kind of an honoring type of thing, but still, what was going through your mind at the time?
So essentially, all of that really was in the beginning. In the immediate time that my father passed away, I was 5 years into working at FedEx, driving the FedEx truck. You know what I mean? And I was inching my way back into music, kind of, but I was still doing rap when I had come back. But I was more we had started a label, and I was more kind of overseeing a label and, kind of easing my way back. and dad passed away a year after that. Now I'm 5 years have been working a regular job. It's just easing my way. Now he's gone. And all of a sudden, like my social media is like, I go from like maybe 3, 4, 500 friends to all of a sudden, my friends list is like, you got a new friend, you got a new friend, you got a new friend. And I'm like thousands of friends and messages, and people are like, yeah, so you got to, we know you're gonna hold it down, and we know you're gonna, yeah, and this, that, and the third. And so mind you, on top of the fact that, of course, is not the cliche to be like cliche or whatever you call that, or anecdotal or whatever, but and of course you couple that with my pops, days before, maybe a week before he passed, he found his moment to pull me aside and tell me he was actually counting on me. It was him who told me that he was counting on me to not just carry his legacy, but to make sure that his name, the Shider name, was known. He what he told me was, essentially he did all he put in a lot of work for Parliament Funkadelic, but he was tasking me with making sure that the Shider name was known. Now, like I said, 5 years working at FedEx, and now I'm easing my way back in, and bang, here you go with this. So essentially what I did was, I had a month off of FedEx, for the service and grieving or whatever. And truth be told, I didn't know which way was up, because I was devastated. I was sad, and I was just, all in my head with all of these things. When I got back to FedEx after that month, they ended up suspending me for picking up like some speed camera tickets or something stupid. like 2 weeks after I got back, suspended me for another month, right? So at that point, I walked through that entire month and said, you know what, that's it for me and FedEx. I just kept looking at all these messages from everybody saying, man, we could carry, looking forward to you. It's time for you to carry the legacy. It's your time. It's da 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 da. It's like, you know what? I got to see FedEx later, because there are better things in front of me. As sad as this was, my father left me something here, but now, like I said, I didn't take any time to take any guitar lessons with him or any of that kind of shit, so essentially I'm looking up at the top of a high mountain that I'm having to climb. And I didn't know what I was going to do, and I took it was a whole year before I came to George and asked him if I could come back on the road. I had been gone for about 6 years. No, I've been gone for 8 years. I asked him if I could come back on the road. And essentially, I just needed some therapy, more so than anything, and because I didn't know what I was doing. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was new to the new way of doing music business, had moved online, and I was clueless to websites and how any of that worked. So I was just like, man, I was like kind of lost. And I asked George to bring me out. He agreed. He brought me out. I rode that tour out with him, and you know how big the band is. And at the time, he had about six guitarists in the band. He said he was going to bring me out. Now, I always sang well, always knew I could sing and knew I could do that from the time I was a young kid. I always was very comfortable with that. So when he said he was going to bring me out, I assumed I was going to be like a background singer or something like that. And I knew he would probably have me singing, one or two of Dad's songs that he used to sing. I figured that was probably going to be the thing. But it wasn't like a you come out here and take your dad's place thing. It was more so I asked him, he brought me out. So I rode that tour out. And then the first official tour that I was called back to be on the payroll, when I got there, all of a sudden, the only guitarist that was there was Michael Hampton. It was six guitars before that. Now it's just Mike here. George shows up late. It's the gathering of the Juggalos. You familiar with that?
Yes,
Okay.
yes. No, I
And
didn't mean to say unfortunately. Let me take that back.
and,
That's like hitting the Bayhive, you know.
right.
Like,
So and
not
it's the gathering.
unfortunately, but you know, there's a certain type of who was it? I was just had on the show. I just had somebody on the show that had more Morris Day and the Time. I was just talking to Tori Ruffin, and they said that they opened up for them, and they said it was, you know, they were scared shitless,
Yeah.
and then they ended up doing the show, and they were just so insanely polite and
Uh-huh.
just had a good time. It was just all about the party and all about the
Yeah.
vibe, and it was just like, well, I guess we were worried for nothing.
Well,
And,
what it is it's kind of like this. It's kind of exaggerated, and it does. They
right.
do have you scared when you get there, but it's the crowd. The crowd is wild, man. Like even if they like you, they're gonna throw Fago
Uh,
at you. Even if they're grooving to you, they're throwing Fago and whatever else they're throwing stuff
oh
at
my
you, and that's
god.
what people are afraid of.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so it's the Juggalos. Now Mike is the only guitarist here. George shows up like late, and he says, "Hey, did you bring your guitar?" And I said, "No, you didn't tell me you wanted me to play guitar." And he was like, "Oh no," So we did the Juggalos with just Mike Hampton playing guitar, and he had at the time he was now remaking his band, and he chose the Juggalos to do that and not tell anybody, and that's how he does it. You just shows up, and whoever's here, that's who we're going with. When he gets there, he says, "Look, this is the plan. You go here, you go there, you run an inside post, ready, break." That's how it happens a lot of the time. It's just like that, right?
Right.
The Juggalos, and this is what it is. So now the next time I show up and it's a tour, and now I got my guitar, and now I've been too timid to even break it out to even say to anybody, I'm here to play guitar, because I knew I couldn't play well enough yet. And now it's showtime, and I got to go up and plug up next to Michael Hampton, and I got to tell Michael Hampton, Mike George told me, he said he wants me to play guitar. And Mike was like, whatever, George, whatever,
God.
man. Yeah, he says whatever, and then I was in Michael Hampton boot camp for as long as he was in the band. But you know what? That was all that I needed, and that's what George does. George will throw you in the fire, and let you figure it out on his stage. That's what he does, and that's why people love to play with George, man, because he's whereas somebody like James Brown is loose and you're gonna get fined if just a little bit out of place here. George is loose, and he will allow you to find your way in real time on his stage. And apparently he realized too, more so than I did, that I needed to learn how to play this guitar if I was going to be on this mission. So it's like, hey, come on up here and play some guitar. Figure it out.
So, for those who don't, Mike Hampton, aka Kid Funkadelic, did he more or less take you under his wing, or was it more? Do you feel like it was more like trial by fire? I mean, was this like you just kind of explained the trial by fire, but what was the outcome of what you actually did? How did it end up? Was it just?
It was all of that, you know what I mean? So, like I said, I've known all them all my life. Those are my uncle. That's my uncle. And that has Mike has always been like one of my most favorite uncles of all of them too. And then when I stepped up there into that realm, it became a different thing, which I got respect for and understood off bucks. But that did not make it any less easier, man. I was in boot camp, buddy, because that's how they all learned. That's how they all learned, man. That's how they all were taught. That's how they all learned. Funkadelic is not for the faint of heart, man. It looks like a lot of fun, and it can be a lot of fun if you learn how to play that music, man. But in the midst of learning, it hurts. It's gonna hurt, but it's gonna learn you to be, like now I almost feel confident to step up on anybody's stage, man, and just, step up to a mic and be like, yo, man, let's do it. And I feel like I got conditioned on Georgia's stage, and especially standing next to somebody. And then so you asked me, how did it end? You know what? Abruptly, Mike was out of the band, and then all of a sudden it was Blackbird McKnight in that very spot next to me, and that's what the current alignment is. So you know, but essentially, when Blackbird got there, thank goodness I had been shaped up enough from Mike that I was able to pick up a lot more from Bird. And, truth be told, now, after all of these years of playing next to two cats like that, man, I have stolen enough from them, whether they know it or not, because truth be told, it's not really a thing of, let's sit down and go over it. It's not really that kind of thing. We come together as Soundcheck. They might be there. If they're there, we go over some stuff. If I'm messing up, it's going to be like, hey, that's not how that goes. That's how that goes. Here you go. Boom, boom. You got it? All right, let's go. You know what I'm saying? Now it's more so it's that kind of a thing. You know what I mean? Like you really have to, you really have to pick it up, man. You have
well, it would.
They're not gonna let you slack. You know what I mean? They don't. No matter how much love they had for you before that, once you step up there, there's just like very little tolerance for slacking, man. So I got that off Bucks. A lot of the lessons were very hard. Harder than I could even tolerate at the time. You know what I'm saying? But I tolerated them all still, or didn't tolerate them all still, knowing that they were all for, the greater good. You know what I mean? So
yeah,
I appreciate them. You know what I mean? When it's all, that's what it all boils down to. I appreciate both of them, man. I got so much love for them. I got more love for them now.
And you said George is loose, and that spontaneity that he has, where it's just kind of like he does the one. I mean, the first time, but not the first time. I think this was actually the second time I was actually backstage. I was standing on the back side stage, and I was just taking pictures and just recording some stuff, and George would come on and off the stage, and he saw me standing there, and I don't know what kind of look I had on my face. It must have been like I was into it, but maybe I don't know if he stopped, and he just stopped right in front of me, and he goes, you need to be standing right over there. And I looked over, and I was like, standing where? And he goes, over there on the stage. I was like, I'm not getting on the stage. And he was just like, no, over there. But so he wanted me to stand next to the keyboardist. It wasn't what was his name? White guy.
Andy Pedrosian.
Yeah. He so he wanted me to stand on the stage next to him. And so I shuffled over there, and so like now I'm standing on stage in front of all these people, this sea of people, and I'm like, okay. And then George is just standing there looking at me. He was like, dance. Like, dance.
So do your
so
thing.
Then I had to stand back there and dance, and it's like, okay, so yeah, this spontaneity thing that he would do was just like this. It was this ongoing thing, and so I think that what you got was, I guess that could be considered technically a trial by fire. But what's really, really great about that is that you did get amazing lessons from, funk legends in Parliament. So let's dig a little bit deeper. Soundcheck.
Yes, sir.
Tell me about your nickname, Soundcheck. Where'd that come from?
Well, I told you I was born on the mothership. So, and then again, I told you I was also born in like right at the peak of Parliament Funkadelic stardom and fame. You know what I mean? So, so at the time, my father had stepped into like that's when he had really started stepping into the front man role. And, he was, officially like the band director and the band leader and, all of that. And he was, probably wearing it a little bit. So the joke was he would be like directing Soundcheck, and he would have me on his hip, and he would be yelling at the band, get it right, that's flat, or doing his thing. And I would be right there on his hip. So this was the joke was he's always there for Soundcheck. You know what I'm saying? Or he's always on time for Soundcheck. You know what I mean? So that's where I got the nickname Soundcheck. They started calling me Soundcheck. He's always at Soundcheck.
Nice. So
Uh,
fast forward to 2016,
uh-huh.
and you finally get to release your first solo CD, Hand Me Down Diapers. We're finally talking about you. Well, we're talking about you this whole time, but again, I one of the things I wanted to make sure of is that we got a little bit of history of your dad, we got a little bit of history of you with Parliament, and again, having to be in that position of, you know, standing in the place of your father, again, not in the place of your father, but you know, you were kind of continuing his legacy in that way and continuing the Shider name. And you know, so now you get an opportunity to actually create your own solo CD. Again, it's called Hand Me Down Diapers. And you know, tell me about the songs on that album, and you know what some of your favorite tracks are on that album, and exactly how that was. I mean, were you writing stuff on the road or a little bit of everywhere, and you just kind of said, now is the time to commit something to CD? I mean, what was that process like?
Okay, so remember when I told you when I got back out on the road, I asked George after a year of trying to figure my way.
Right.
So so it probably wasn't until maybe 2014 or 2015 where because I told you I quit my job, and took this mission on as a job. It wasn't paying me. So it wasn't until about 2015 that I finally had like saved and garnered up enough money to like put together like a interface and a studio program and a mic and a computer. Finally I got a home studio, because all between 2010 and 2014, 15, I was like at someone else's studio who either I could buy 5 hours to sit there and tinker around for 5 hours and come up with something, but then I have to come up with some more money at some point to put another 5 hours into this song. And it was like, it'll take me forever to record an album at that rate. Or I would get to a studio and somebody would be trying to take control over the project, you know what I mean, and trying to like take creative control over it. And it was like I wasn't going to have that. So it was just all this to the point where I was like, I need my own studio, and I couldn't afford it. 2014, 2015, put these components together. 2016, finally got the computer. Now I put the program on my computer. I had never sat and recorded myself on a home studio. So my first thing was, it's going to take me about a month to probably learn this thing, and then I can start maybe recording something. Well, I sat down with the program and just kind of started tinkering and just kind of started, what you say, how you say, you just kind of hands on, just playing with it, touching,
Right.
figured out how to get in the record, put some things down as I was tinkering. And, before just doing that, I had my groove for Sugar Rush. Was like, oh, I like that. I'm gonna write to this, So I started writing to that groove, and there was Sugar Rush. And that's what that entire record really was me just, okay, let me play with this, learn some more about the studio and play with it again. And, let me see if I put this bass, like, what can I put on this bass? And, yeah, just be messing around.
Y'all hear that, right? That's Sugar Rush right there.
That's it. Yeah, that is officially the first song that I ever even recorded on my own.
So he's got that Funkadelic sound.
You're the sour apple of my eye, and I can't help but wonder why.
Yeah, so you got that going now. So now you're kind of moving along now, and so
I got my little roll going. And so as I got my role going, I started to bring in a few, musicians that I knew to kind of, help me from a musical standpoint. My boy Keith came in and helped me write a few more songs. My boy Keith Marshall actually wrote the groove for Hand Me Down Diapers. So I completed it that way. So it was all just kind of me just tinkering with this studio, vibing with a couple of friends, on certain days, and those vibes were created that record. Nothing was pre-written. The last song that I did on that album was Hand Me Down Diapers. I had the music for Hand Me Down Diapers for months, but I could not for the life of me figure out what I wanted to say vocally, because it was a short track and I was trying to say so much because the track was so dear to me and I couldn't figure out how to say all that I wanted to say in so little time. You know what I mean? So it took me months. And in the midst of that, I just kept on just creating the tracks. And, every time I would sit down, I would pick one out and vibe to it. And, if I needed lyrics, I hadn't put any lyrics on it yet, I would vibe some lyrics. If it already had, lyrics and a vibe on it, I would see if it needed anything else. I would mix on it. I just would tinker with shit. The last thing that I did on that album was put those lyrics on Hand-Me-Down Diapers, because as I finally completed whatever the last song was before that one, as I completed that track,
This is a story about
that very night, these lyrics all of a sudden started coming to me. Those very lyrics all of a sudden started. They after months of listening to that track and being stumped on it, all of a sudden the lyrics just like bang, here you go, and they started flowing out me. So that one was the last song that I did. So that's why Sugar Rush is the first song and Hand-Me-Down Diapers is the last song, because Sugar Rush is the first song that I started recording on that for that record. Hand-Me-Down Diapers was the last song that I completed. On down to the point where after I finally put the vocals and lyrics and completed it in that sense, all of a sudden I could hear my dad in my ear saying, first off, I heard him all throughout that night talking about how proud he was of me, because I was proud of myself and finally completed one. And then after I put the vocals down, I could hear him in my ear saying, I need to be on this track. I need to be on this. I need to be on this track. You know what I mean? So I was like, man, I got to figure a way to put him on here. And then it was like, you know what? I'm sure there's some interviews or there's something of him out there somewhere where I can catch him saying something.
Right.
I went to YouTube and put, I think, Gary Shider interview, and lo and behold, the very first thing that I seen on that page, I touched it, and that little bit of clip and footage of, or that little bit of bite from him and that interview was the first video that I picked. I started listening and I heard him say what he said. I was like, that's it right there, man. It was like, he's on this record, man. Nice. I just took my phone and put it up to the microphone and I just played what I needed and stopped it and I mixed it in there and he was on my record. And then that was the cherry on top of my first fucking record, man.
Yeah, that was, and as Lord said, it was incredible, mega dope debut album for sure. Absolutely.
I appreciate y'all, man. But I knew I was only getting my feet wet then, man, because like I said, my father taxed me with making sure that the Shider name now was known. So that is my mission, man. And that's why I'm determined to keep on putting these records out here, man. You know what I'm saying? And I don't care if nobody ends up hearing them in the end. What I know is at some point they're going to make their mark. You know what I mean? If it's in the future, if it's in the present or the near future or whatever it is, they're going to make their marks and they're going to do what they're supposed to do. Because one thing that I have learned in this mission since I've like quit working a 9-to-5 and made this like my full-time job, it's not lucrative, but I am wealthy in blessings. I am wealthy in happiness. And I am wealthy in lessons. One of the main lessons I've learned is the more that you put into something, the more passion you put into something, the more you get out of it. So that's what I've been learning. And that's why I just keep on just forging ahead, man. I'm going to just keep on mashing, bro, because that's what I'm supposed to do.
Yeah. And a lot of people get caught up in that too, because, if you focus on too many things, and you spread yourself too thin, then your energies, as far as like, being able to kind of make that one thing great, that one thing that you're super passionate about, just being able to take that and just build it up. Because, and I experience a lot of that too. I experience the same sort of thing because, I do have a full-time job, but I also do this. And I also, run the radio station, and I've got like all these things that are going on. And sometimes I DJ, and sometimes I do. It's like,
Get stretched.
you got all these things that are going on. It's just like, and I know that if I ever just said, you know what, I'm just going to stop. Every single bit of my energy is going to go towards this one specific thing that I know that thing would be super, super successful. But it's like, when you got so much going on, especially when you put family in the mix and everything else, it becomes very, very difficult. But I know there's people out there that could really benefit from that message, not from you, but also from what I'm saying too, is just like, you've got lots of things going on in your life. Figure out what that one passion is and dump everything into that passion. If you've got dreams and you've got those passions, focus on that. Just put your energies into that. Take that stuff that you're doing that's not really, not creating any type of, excuse me, like monetary freedom for you or whatever it is. And it's just time sucking your way, like sitting in front of Netflix or watching movies or trying to binge watch shit, and get in front of pour that into your passion, and you'll start to see a difference, man. You'll start to see that needle move.
You got to treat it like a plant, man. You have to
absolutely,
man. You got to water it. If you water the plant, it will grow.
Absolutely. Doug says here, keep hustling.
Yes, indeed. Right. Hashtag keep hustling. That's right.
So jump forward to 2019.
Yes,
okay.
Sir.
Every year I gather my favorite funk albums, and not just my favorite funk albums. I ask for people's input from all over the world. And I'd put together my favorite top 20 albums of 2019. I've been doing this for many years. I've been doing this since 2010. So I've been doing it like a decade.
Okay.
And it's become a very, very revered list in the music community and the funk community, because a lot of people are like, what's he going to put on this list? So when I'm gathering the list every year, there's a sound, because it's specifically funk. There's a sound and there's a feel that I'm looking for. And occasionally, I'll go a little tad left field on some of these songs, bands like Lettuce and the New Master Sounds. And of course, Parliament, but that old school funk wins every time. That sound of Ohio Players and Slave and Daz Band. And, and you have to put it in the high quality. The buzz quotient has got to be there too. You know what I'm saying?
I dig it.
It's just, something that has that thump, but that gets your head bobbing, and just puts you in that right headspace, and that's kind of the magic of funk. And you're really kind of hard pressed to really find those albums anymore. I mean, I think the last time I really kind of felt something was Childish Gambino's Awaken My Love. It was kind of like, oh man, this is whole, and then before that, To Pimp a Butterfly, Kendrick's album. And it's like, there's certain albums that just, they have that something there. But 2019 didn't have that. I just did not, there was great albums on that list, really good funk albums. And for a collection of albums, it was just, it was a good list. It was one of my favorite lists, but the list was done.
Mm-hmm.
And then as a late entry, as I'm like getting this stuff together, ready to release it onto the world, a friend of mine, Lenny Beeson, private messages me, and he goes, Garrett Shider's album Regurgitated Youth is on there, right? And I was like, what? You didn't say. I've been asking for weeks now for people to put, send in your albums. And that was like, it was just not on my radar. It just, I didn't know that it came out, and I didn't say it to him, but I was like,
who?
Man, I'm already done with this list. I'm already done with this list. It's over. I asked people for weeks to make sure you get me the favorites, and here comes Lenny after the fact, but I entertained him because I trust him and I know he has a good ear. So I said, all right, I'm going to listen to it, but I'm not going to change my list. The list is done. And then all of a sudden I put it on, and I'm like, It's like a stop the presses moment. I'm like, what the heck is going on? Because I didn't start from the beginning of the list. I literally, this was the first song that played. I clicked shuffle play. And then I'm like, holy, oh my God. I was like, what is happening here?
Yeah.
And it literally was, no joke. It was a stop the presses moment. I was like, this album was beyond, above and beyond anything that was, it was no disrespect to anything else that was on that album. Again, there were a lot of great music on that album, but that feel, that funk, that vibe, that buzz quotient, everything that I said to you that I was looking for was in, and it wasn't just on that one song. It was like littered all throughout the whole entire album. And it was like, it maintained that vibe. And as you said, when you were talking about, when you were creating Hand-Me-Down Diapers, that you realized at that point that was just like the kicking off point. And so I have to ask, and the album we're talking about, for those not in the know, obviously is Regurgitated Youth. And what we're going to talk about Pandemic here in a second, which is just is freaking amazing. But what was the difference? What was the magic there? I mean, there has to be something that was starkly different in the way that you created this album and the way that album was coming together. What was different with this album as far as putting all the pieces in place for this one?
Well, there were a lot of things that really went into changing that were making that album different. A lot of things. A few of those things, probably the one of the main things was I started learning my things, my equipment. You know, I started to learn the program that I was using and learn different things about the program and how to mix on it and how to record on it. You know, just that. I started to, and when I started to kind of get my feet wet with Hand-Me-Down Diapers, you know, I kind of felt good and felt excited about the fact that I did an album, man. It's actually sounds pretty damn good. You know, I got excited. So I stayed in there, man. And I just played more. I recorded more and I got better. And so that was one thing, major factor. Another thing that was probably really huge, I incorporated a new writing partner there, and he's actually here checking out this interview with me. His name is Lance Reynolds. Helped me lyrically write about half of that album. So that made it, and he's really clever with the pen, so that made it a lot more clever and fun. So those two things, as well as the fact as, I said, I started to kind of feel better about what I was doing. I felt more confident. Right. You know, I started having more fun with it. And then I have another partner, Keith Marshall, who actually, he's the one who wrote the music for Hand-Me-Down Diapers, the song. My boy Keith Marshall, he was also someone who helped me kind of contributed to a lot of the writing process on that next one. And we kind of just banged at it. You know, like we made it a project. You know, we just kind of stayed in here and, you know what I mean? We hit it hard, man. And, you know, every time they came in here with something, man, you know, I just tried to make sure that I made it as stanky and as funky as I could possibly, you know, make it. You know, they would come in here with things and I would just try to put all the, you know, real obscure ideas behind them and just try to make them very P-Funk, whatever it was, you know what I mean? You know, I just started to really just have fun, man. It was all of that, man.
And I think it was also the vocal arrangements too on this one, because whereas Hand-Me-Down Diapers did have, you know, some of that on it, this one you really kind of took some of even on that song that we just played, Fun with a K, that is, you know, that really Parliament choir. It's not even a choir. It's just
Yeah,
it's
that's what
like
that's what I
guys
meant.
that
I
sing.
was trying to put the that's what I meant by trying to put the colors, and I that's
Yeah,
kind of what I was meaning as
yeah,
far as
right.
a
Yeah,
lot
it
of it is
worked.
in those background vocals. I get what you're saying. Like that's something that I really wanted to start touching on from here on out. And I also did a lot of that on Pandemic too. You know, I figured I heard how that kind of made it, you know, once I started kind of playing with those backgrounds and doing those kinds of things and painting with those obscure backgrounds and, you know, those obscure phrasings and, you know, notes that aren't even notes, you know what I mean, that are more so just, you know, I'm harmonizing with myself, just talking in different tones. And essentially, you know, once I heard how it came out, it was like, you know what, that's the aesthetic right there. That's it. You know, so at that point, I kind of, so, you know, to make a long story short, I kind of started to really figure out what I was doing on that next record. I really started to figure it out. You know, I said, hand me down diapers. I was trying to, you know, I was getting my feet wet. I was figuring it out. And the construction of that album was me figuring it out, figuring myself out, figuring out what my sound was going to be, you know, what I was really good at, what I wasn't good at, what, you know, yeah.
And so now we are in 2020. God help us all. But we're here in 2020, and you've got another album out that just came out, Pandemic.
Yeah.
And obviously we know where you got the title from. And one of the things that, you know, I noted about this album when I was listening to it, because I was like, oh yeah, it's another album. Great. Just in time for the list. Just in time for the best
I was
funk
thinking
albums.
about you this time.
So I was like, yeah, just in time. Let's see what we got. And what I do notice here on Pandemic is there's a couple things going on. First off, there's more guitar than there was before, so you're getting a little bit more, I guess, comfortable with your style, as far as, or more or less finding your style on this album. And then of course you've got these you know, little songs like Pac-Man, that is just
game this side of Phoenix. It's nothing but the dog and
now lyric wise.
the way I see it, ain't nothing wrong with that.
So lyric wise,
Like Pac-Man.
listen,
Ladies,
I like to bite the
where my
apple,
funky ladies at?
like to lick the strawberry. When I say I'm ready for breakfast, I ain't talking about no eggs. I'm talking about the power pellet in between your legs.
okay, so you also go on a little bit different of a route. You're like, okay, we're gonna kind of just see how we're just gonna push the boundaries just a little bit. We're just gonna go a little bit further, a little bit something more.
Check it out. Let me explain that one a little bit.
Oh yeah, please explain that one.
So check it out, right? So all right. So first and foremost, hand me down diapers. The musicians are P-Funk. It's Danny Bajosian on most of it. I think Lodge Curry playing bass, Benzel Baltimore, our current drummer, musicians on that one. The second one, more some local musicians and a lot of myself playing instruments too. That's another thing was different on the next one. I started playing a lot of more of the instruments on the next one. So that particular song and this particular album, I pretty much played everything on this record besides the songs that you see where the other bass players are featured. And Bipolar is the only song that I didn't play any keyboards on. Everything else, I played everything on this record. So that particular song, the first thing that I started doing was on that keyboard. So when I started playing it, I said, hey, that sounds like the Pac-Man game. And it was like, I need to write something I need to reference Pac-Man in this game. And so when I put myself in that box, I was like, I can't think of but one way to kind of play on the Pac-Man reference, you know, because I wanted it to be like some kind of double entendre or some kind of, you know, comedy or something fun. But that was the only thing that I could come up with was that. So it was like, well, I'm just go with it.
It was definitely a standout of this because you kind of listen, you know, the first listen through was kind of just, you know, taking in all the melodies, but right out of the gate, the lyrics just came crashing through on
that one is like boom.
And you got Curry from Parliament Funkadelic. You also work with Norwood Fisher, who from Fishbone, and also you had
Doug Wimbish.
Doug Wimbish from Living Color. I mean, you had so many people that were, you know, that are also good friends of Funkatopia. We've had both of them on the show. I've never had Curry on the show before, but what was, I mean, how did you meet them? How did they actually get involved in the process? Because I mean, really, obviously the opening track is the title track Pandemic with Doug on it, from Living Color. How did you get involved with Doug and getting him involved in this project?
Okay, so Doug Wimbish was actually on 3 songs on Regurgitated Youth, and so a mutual friend of ours, Miss Petra Richterova, shout out to Petra. She was knowing I was recording that album, and I think and like I said, I essentially play all the instruments regardless, and then after the fact, it's like, you know what, would you play on this? Would you play drums on this? Would you do this? I'll do that, right? So it was one of those songs where it was like, man, I wish I had a bass player to play on this. And she was like, you know, I could ask Doug to play on that. And I was like, dag, would you? That would be awesome. So she asked, and he agreed. And he played on 3. And so I ended up meeting him after that, essentially, finally face to face. We sat down and talked, and come to find out that he was like, man, how's your mother? He was like, you have no idea. He's like, man, I used to come to your house when y'all lived in Atlanta when you was a little kid. And I was like, wow, you know what I mean? So yeah, so that was pretty deep. And
That's awesome.
As far as Norwood, you know, Fishbone, you know, they're like family, you know,
Legends.
But they're like family, you know, they have been, you know, when I was on the road with George, when I was in my 20s, I would remember when we would do shows with them, just how, you know, it was kind of just like this family thing. So when I finally, you know, came back out here and stepped out here on my own, I went to NAMM the first time, and I just heard Norwood just, you know, I just heard somebody say, hey, Garrett, what's up? And I looked up and it was Norwood. And I was just like, wow, he just, you know, in my head, it was like, wow, he just shouted me out like that, you know, like we was cool. Because, you know, because I guess I'm fam, you know what I mean? So it was just like, hey, what's up, dog? You know, and we just, you know, I kick it, and from that moment on, I kick it with Norwood every time I go out to California. Like from that moment on, and since then, Norwood has become like a big brother to me. You know, Doug too. You know, Doug is like my uncle, man. Like all of them are my uncles, man. Those are my uncles. So, you know, essentially, it's just like, hey, man, would you do this for me? And it's like, okay, look, and they
Love Fishbone.
Angelo. Dr. Mad vibe right there.
Yeah, that was actually at George Clinton's final concert in it was his final concert in Atlanta, and Fishbone opened up last and it was the last one in Atlanta at the Fox Theater.
Okay, yeah.
And I happened to go outside. I was going outside to take a break, and then I hear Chris. And I turn around, and there he was. And of course, he's always quick. He's always got a handful of his CDs, the Dr. Mad Vibe CDs.
Yeah,
and he was just like, oh man, you got to get my latest CD, and he let me look at it, and I was like, oh man, this is really, really good. And I've been looking at the CD, and he would just say $10. Like, okay, I see what you did there. All right, so yeah, so Yeah, I love Fishbone. I've been following Fishbone for, gosh, I mean, since the 80s.
Yes,
And,
indeed,
you
man.
know, even to the point of sitting out. So there was one concert when they were touring with The Reality of My Surroundings, and I couldn't afford to get into the show at the time. And that was like when they were at their prime, really at that,
Mhm.
and their hate. Well, that wasn't really their prime, but as far as commercial wise, um, and I couldn't afford to go to the show, but I went around to the back of the stage at the Roxy in Atlanta, and I was able to sit on the steps right outside of the backstage door. And I was
Uh,
actually sat out there and listened to the whole entire concert. It was just like, oh man, I wish I could be in there, man. Oh my God, I wish I could be in there. And Norwood actually came out and said hello after the show. And so it was like, the people that paid
yeah,
the ticket didn't get to see this. But
yeah,
yeah, man,
that's
these
super
guys,
dope.
they've been around, man. They have
Yeah,
been
that's
absolutely
that's
around.
super dope, man. They OGs too, man. I love them cats, man.
Yeah, they just man, I got stories with all those guys too, man. But um man, I cannot tell you how much again of an honor it was to have you on the show. As I said, I'd actually put this crawler up because I know that a lot of people can get stuff from you from thefunkstar.com. You can actually see it scrolling down here in the
Yeah, I
bottom, the
see that.
Funkstar. Okay.
Yeah, go
So
check that out, man. You can get my merch and my music up there too, man. If you
yeah,
don't want to go through this third party site.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and if here's what I would tell you to do, please absolutely go to the website and buy even if you buy the digital downloads directly from that site, please do so. Don't bother. I mean, it's okay if you want to check it out on Spotify or whatever you want to just check it out, but please go and actually buy the CD and actually purchase the CD because all the music that Garrett has put out has been phenomenal. I mean, right out of the gate with the debut album and everything that you've done and
Thank you,
Regurgitated Youth,
bro.
it's just you were able to just capture the rawness of the funk that I guess a lot of the funk bands just don't do anymore. It's just, and if they do it, it's really kind of either got this more of a jam band type of vibe. Again, no disrespect to any bands like Lettuce and uh some of the other foundations of funk and other cats that are out there that are doing the jam band thing and actually making a really good living out of it, because it's still phenomenal music. It really, really is.
Mhm.
But
Yeah, I've
to
seen some of these bands. They dope.
man, I mean, and these musicians are no joke. I
Yeah,
mean, these
man.
bands like the Motet and these guys, I mean, they are just the musicianship is just on another level. I mean, these are like some of the best people at what they do,
Yeah,
but
they
it's
they
really,
all
really difficult to capture that raw funk sound. And that's one of the things that I love about all the music that you've put out is that it captures that rawness. It captures that, and you do it so well, and it just seems to just flow out of you. And there's a very, very good reason for it because the apple does not fall far from the tree, man. And Garrett, I cannot thank you enough. Everybody, please
man.
go out and purchase this brand new album, Pandemic. Go out there and buy hand-me-down diapers or Regurgitated Youth, any of them.
It's all
It's
up there at
it's
thefunkstar.com, man. Go check it
man,
all out. And y'all catch me on whatever your social media of choice is. I'm probably there. You can find me at Starchild Jr. You know what I'm saying? Just it's easy to find at Starchild Jr. YouTube, Twitter.
yeah, man.
Actually, you got to put a 78 on the end of it if you go to Twitter. But everywhere else, at Starchild Jr. Man, y'all hit me up, man. And you know
Let
what?
me know, man.
Real quick. First off, thank y'all for having me, man. Thank you for having me on here. And double thank you because like you said, you weren't privy to my record until you were put up on it. You know, same thing, man. Like I happened to just get tagged in this thing, man. And I looked at it and read it, and I was like, what is this Funkatopia thing? I've never seen this before. Now, Lance Reynolds, who I told you helped me write that record, he was familiar with you guys. When I told him about it, he was like, oh, wow. You know what I mean? So I started reading, and then I seen my record. I was like, whoa. And then I read your review. I was like, dude, you know what I'm saying? I think I beamed for the rest of the year. That's one of the things that let me know, like I said, man, the more you nurture your plant, the more it's going to grow for you, man. You just keep on nurturing your plant, man. It's going to grow. You know what? Real quick, I didn't give a shout out to Uncle Flea, man, because Flea was on Regurgitated Youth too, man. I talked about all my bass uncles, man. Let me get a real quick shout out to Uncle Flea.
Oh man, if reach out to him and tell him we'd like to have him on the show.
Oh, I sure will, man. You know what? If you reach out to him, he probably would be happy to do it. He's a lovely guy.
I'll talk to him. I'm gonna absolutely talk to him.
Yeah, I'll put a word in for you too, though. I got you.
All right, Garrett. Thank you so much for hanging out, man.
Thank you for having me, man.
And I see some people going, "Oh no, I'm late." It's okay. We'll do the video. We'll get it all processed for you, and we'll get it out and push it out via the radio station and also on the website. And of course, it will be everywhere that you can obviously
infinitely in cyberspace.
Everywhere.
Infinitely.
Garrett, thanks, brother. I appreciate it, man.
Thanks, Mr. Chris, man. You take it easy, man.
Take it easy, brother.
Let's do it again sometime.
Absolutely. It's a date.
All right, brother.